All right, everyone, welcome to our second informational meeting for the SEEK Fund. We are so excited to see so many faces today. Just wanted to let you know we are recording this meeting and we'll have it available on our website for your reference. We are going to ask that please stay muted until we get to the Q&A section of our presentation. You also can put your questions in the chat and we'll be sure to answer them later on in our Q&A. So before we begin, we are going to start off with some introduction.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Candace Bach. I am the Director of Government Relations here at the Association of Washington Cities. We are administering the SEEK funding opportunity through our contract with OSPI. And so I've been serving as kind of the project, I don't know what the project lead, project manager. Jacob's really the brains. So I'll turn it over to Jacob.
Good morning, everyone. Jacob Ewing. I'm a policy analyst here at AWC, also helping out with the SEEK funding. It's good to see some names and groups who have participated in 2021 and excited to see those who are going to apply and be using these funds next in 2022. So good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone. Tiffany Hanzo Martin. I am the WRPA Executive Director and also working with AWC on the more administrative side and WRPA website and form build.
And good morning, everybody. I'm Doug Levy. I've been your WRPA state lobbyist for a number of years and had the honor of helping to work on the SEEK funding with a number of others. And I'm just over the moon with how many people are on this Zoom call. Fantastic. So look forward to the discussion.
Good morning, everybody. My name is John Mishra. I'm the Executive Director of Special Programs and Federal Accountability at OSPI, and I'm the Summer Programming contact person for OSPI. So I'm joining you from OSPI, which sits on the ancestral lands of the Stace Chast Band of the Squaxin Island people. And just like everybody else, thank you for your interest in this opportunity. I want to applaud the efforts of our partners to launch this grant last summer with a very, very short timeline. So even with the short timeline, we're able to get this thing launched and had some excellent opportunities. So I was thoroughly impressed with the outcomes. Looking forward to a very robust summer full of engaging and enriching activities for our students.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jennifer Papich. I am the current WRPA president, and I work for the city of Spokane as a recreation director. Just like everybody else, I'm blown away by how many people are on this call. I'm so excited to see what great applications that we received this cycle and thankful these partnerships that we have with AWC and OSPI.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, just to echo previous comments, it's great to see so much interest in this program for 2022. I'm Dave Johnson. I'm the WRPA president-elect, and during the day, I'm the Parks and Recreation Director and Assistant City Manager for the City of Maple Valley. Thanks for being with us today.
And we do not have Paul Simmons here. He is our past president and director of parks, but he has participated in collecting our advisory council to review your applications. Next, we're going to kind of go over what our goal statement is and key funding objectives. So we have this, we're putting this together to best serve school-age youth. WRPA and the Association of Washington Cities will strive to ensure that funds are allocated to a diverse group of jurisdictions of all sizes that are geographically spread across the state. Additionally, the program emphasizes targeting funds towards programs that serve school-age youth populations most impacted by COVID-19 and furthest from educational justice. Funding is for programs that prioritize activities that promote students connecting socially with their classmates, encouraging students to engage in physical activity, and support families who have struggled with childcare needs.
Okay, so a quick history, everybody, on how this came to be, how this funding came to be. The Cliff Notes version basically is OSPI, or the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, is the entity that initially was the recipient of the relief funds. They approached AWC, or Association of Washington Cities, as a partner to establish how to go about distributing these funds that were dedicated specifically for summer outdoor youth programming and increasing access to those that have been historically underserved and most impacted by the pandemic. AWC then thankfully reached out to us at WRPA, and this amazing partnership formed, and we have been collaborating, developing the grant or the funding criteria, the funding application, an evaluation process, contracts, a method for distributing the funds, etc., all wrapped up in this pretty sleek fund bow. We are so thankful for the partnerships and so proud to be able to be working together to provide local parks and recreation agencies the funding to support, increase access, and expand their summer programs serving school-aged youth, kindergarten through 12th grade, or ages 4 through 21 years of age. In this cycle, the summer of 2022, there are $10 million of funding available. So today, during this informational webinar, we will go over the funding program. We'll go over it in great detail, all the components from the application process all the way through to reimbursement. We will give you guys updates for those that applied last year. We have some updates from last year from lessons learned. We'll go over important deadlines and dates you want to mark for this grant cycle or funding cycle. And then, of course, we will leave room at the end for question and answer. And like Tiffany said before, if throughout the presentation, you're afraid that you're going to forget your question for the end, please go ahead and plop it there in the chat, and she will be monitoring that.
All right, so I have an opportunity to speak to this slide, and I just love this slide because this aligns with the whole child approach that OSPI has, and that working with our funding partners. It's just great to see this. So just going through here, I don't usually read these verbatim, but these things are so important that I'm going to today. So the funding goals for SEEK are to address students' social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs through a combination of activities that include strong partnerships with community-based organizations and other summer providers, including summer camps. We know that the social and emotional impact on students during the COVID-19 pandemic has been huge, so it's great to have this as one of the goals. Secondly, create partnerships to help support and sustain the summer programs, especially those in rural and remote communities. I used to work in rural and remote communities, and these services were very needed, and unfortunately we didn't have them, so it was awesome to be able to get these funding opportunities out to those communities. Thirdly, focus of the state is to maximize enrollment in the summer programs for students of all ages, with a particular focus on undeserved students and students most impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And then lastly, it says lastly listed here, but it is a major priority, prioritize activities or programs that promote social connections amongst peers, encourage physical activity, and support families who are struggling with childcare needs. So thank you for the opportunity to present this slide.
Back to who may apply. It pretty much spells it out here in this slide. However, the SEEK fund is intended for local government parks and recreation agencies, and those are listed below, like city and county parks and recreation agencies, metropolitan park districts, park and rec districts, and tribal governments. I know that we have had questions in the past if state parks are eligible to apply, and they can be eligible if an applying agency is partnering with state parks for the summer programming. And that's how that partnership can work to get state funding that way. New this year, something that we changed from last year is instead of bunching all of your applications for all the programs that you're requesting into one application, we are asking that each agency can do up to 3 applications, 1 per program area, and that the total request per agency cannot exceed $500,000. And we'll go into what those specific program areas are. And please feel free to ask some questions, because I think there's some different ways that we can go about grouping those program areas. And again, just a reminder that this is just for summer 2022 programming, and it's not for capital projects or expenses. And if you're looking to acquire equipment to help with those programs, Those pieces of equipment or supplies cannot exceed $5,000 per unit.
All right, so let's go over program costs. And there was a good, thank you, Jennifer, for touching on the capital infrastructure pieces as well. So again, those are ineligible. Any capital expenditures are ineligible. However, there are a lot of other different areas that you can fund using SEEK dollars. So first off is staffing, and obviously this is going to be a big cost for a lot of different programs and organizations. So if you have staff directly providing programming or involved in the programming, those staff costs can be reimbursed through SEEK. Additionally, for equipment and supplies, this last year, what was great to see is we had a lot of kayaking and water safety programs that were put in place. So for example, kayaks or sporting equipment or art supplies, anything that is directly related to the program or needed for the program can also be reimbursed. One of the things that was talked about earlier on, and John mentioned, is that, really we're hoping, one of the goals of the programs is to increase access for underserved communities and underserved youth. So another area that we would really like to see is scholarships or subsidies. So scholarships for people to apply, or for subsidies to lower the cost, so more youth can participate in programs around the state. Transportation costs can also be reimbursed. That doesn't mean that you can go out and buy a vehicle, but if you need to rent a vehicle, charter a bus, things like that, those costs will be covered as well. Facility costs, again, this last summer, we saw groups that needed to rent out a pavilion or a place to hold activities. So if you do not have your own facilities or you need to rent a facility, those can be covered. For professional services, as it says there, you do need to be specific. This can be an outside group that you bring in to provide programming for youth. I think we'll cover this later, but if you do bring in outside groups, they will need to follow the same obligations as you for insurance and reporting and whatnot. But you can partner with outside groups to have that. Then fees for activities or field trips. So if you are going, for example, to corn maze, it's fall, not summer, but if you're going to an outside event, you can get those reimbursed as well as meals, as long as you're not already a current OSBI partner. So again, last year, what we saw with a lot of programs is, they have kids for a full day. And so providing snacks and meals, those items would be covered and would be reimbursable under SEEK. Candace, I'm not sure if I missed anything or if you want to clarify anything that I said there.
Thanks, Jacob. I think you did a great job. I see there are a couple of questions in the chat about what's eligible around costs for training. So what is not an eligible cost is to perhaps send your staff to a training conference. If you are as part of staffing up for a program and your staff has to go to first aid training or something like that, that's certainly, their staff time for that is an eligible cost, but sending them to outside training is not necessarily an eligible cost. And then there was a question about like partnering with a vendor on kayak rentals, those sorts of things. Certainly if it's part of achieving your program goals and, it's effectively a field trip, yes. And then the $5,000 for equipment directly related to the program is correct. I think that was the question.
Yeah, and just to clarify, for the 5,000 for equipment, so that's 5,000 per unit. So that's not 5,000 in total equipment. But so, for example, we had groups who purchased kayaks last year or this last summer. And so it was per individual kayak, as long as it was under $5,000.
And Candace and Jacob, while you have the mic, we have two more that just came in on translator and lifeguard certification.
And I would certainly invite John to jump into if he thinks we're getting anywhere that makes him uncomfortable. I think translators, particularly where you're showing that you're reaching youth who otherwise wouldn't be served, that would be potentially a great addition to a program. And lifeguard certifications, again, if it's kind of essential training for staff that's needed to provide direct services to a program, potentially I would I would hesitate to say, though, that we would fund your lifeguard certification program where you're not drawing a connection to these program goals.
Thank you, Candace, for the opportunity to weigh in. The last statement you made is the big one, tied specifically back to the program goals. So if you can tie them back to your program goals, those will be allowable costs. So please consider that front end first as you're looking to do these purchases.
So this is me. Good morning again, everybody. It's Doug Levy. So this is where we get into the guts of the types of things we want you to describe in your program. So again, I think John did a great job at the beginning talking about what's desired here, and that's the programs that are really going to promote social connections, physical activity for getting kids outdoors, and supporting those families who we know are struggling with childcare needs and are impacted heavily by COVID-19 and the isolation that's brought. So that's the very type of folks that we're trying to help through this program. So we want you in your application to tell us how your agency is going to accomplish these goals and really show us how you're going to be achieving some things you otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So the funding's, giving you an ability to get to more kids and families. If you have outside organizations that are partnering with your agency, we saw that in the chat, the notion of, for example, partnering with a nonprofit. Just know that there's going to be a proof of insurance requirement there that AWC is going to need to see. And then this next one's a big one that we wanted to make sure to highlight this time around. And that is, if you are charging fees, and we know a number of you do have fee for service components for your summer programs, we get that, but we want to know how you are going to ensure you're getting to those unserved or underserved populations. So be sure and tell us if you're providing scholarships, if you're doing something else to reduce or eliminate the costs. That's going to be a key that we're going to want to see in the applications that you do online. And then, data. You'll see that we want some real quantifiable information, and one of them is the numbers of hours each participant is going to spend outdoors. Next slide. And then again, with this emphasis on serving school-aged children and youth, we're talking about a defined 4 to 21 year age bracket of, and that's getting to all those kids who are getting ready to enter the K through 12 system or have been in it and are going to participate and be served. And then again, we want to know how you're going to target the youth populations you're going to recruit to participate. So what does your outreach plan look like? Make sure you tell us that. Tell us about barriers that exist in your communities right now and how the program you're applying for and the funding you're applying for is going to address tearing down those barriers. Again, we want the quantifiable information of how many youth you're going to serve and the percentage of kids in the program whose families are low income and or eligible for free and reduced price lunch. I think most, if not all of you have that already, but be sure to tell us that. And then again, we want to know how you're going to collect data, because that's going to be absolutely critical for AWC and ultimately OSPI to have, so that we can measure the effectiveness of this program going forward.
My turn. Talk a little bit about the application schedule. So the schedule this time around should be much more friendlier than the last round. So the applications are actually open now. They opened on Monday this week, and they'll be open for a month. And so the deadline to submit your applications is Thursday, November 18th by 5 p.m. So that gives a good solid month to collect all the information and prepare the application. The evaluation period, you can see there, is about a month and a half, and there's a couple of reasons why we have such a long evaluation period. Number one is obviously the holidays puts a little bit of a wrinkle into that for the evaluation team. But also we want to make sure that we're giving them enough time to go through all the evaluations. We had 30 some odd last time. We're anticipating much more than that. So we want to make sure that they have enough time to go through that. And also, if there's any follow-up questions that they have, we want to allow enough time for the review committee to ask those clarifying questions. So that's why we have such a robust evaluation period. And then applicants will be notified by January 10th. It'll probably be pretty close to January 10th when those notifications go out. So again, much more friendlier schedule for everybody, the applicants and the review committee. And just a reminder at the bottom there that this is a reimbursement program. So just bear that in mind as you're putting your information together. And if I can pass along one tip from the review committee that they wanted to pass along when we met earlier this week is that as you're preparing your application, if you can please be succinct and to the point in your narrative information, that would really help them out. So with that, we'll move Tiffany to the next slide. The evaluation tiers. So again, a reminder, your combined ask maxes out at $500,000. And applications will be scored and evaluated with other similar population range applicants. And you can see the breakdown there, up to 10,000, 10,000 to 50,000, 50 to 100,000, and then 100,000 up. So really trying to score you against other similar sized communities.
Okay. And Dave touched on this a little bit, but before we go into this scoring criteria, I really do want to thank our review committee of amazing emeritus professionals that were with us for the 2021 cycle and that are going to be with us again for the summer 2022 cycle. And that's Dennis and Terry Higashiyama, Barb Brock, Larry Otis, and Al Frank. I believe I got them all. Dave, let me know if I missed anybody, but they are doing a tremendous job of evaluating these, and we're so thankful for their participation. As you can see below, these are the 4 areas that we are going to be, or that the review committee is going to be scoring your applications on, and some are weighed more heavily than others. Doug touched on the youth served. That is the most heavily weighed of the scoring criteria. We really want to emphasize that this is really going out to those youth impacted by COVID-19, ones that have difficulty participating in programs or maybe have not participated in the past, ones that are historically underserved. That is the highest weight. So please keep that in mind when you're filling out your application. Then next is the program design or program description. And that is the second highest weighted. And we really want to have you guys, when you are submitting those applications, be very specific. It's like, what is the program? What are they going, what are the funds going for? Telling that story of how you're reaching those folks, how you're meeting the criteria. And then again, going with your program description, making sure that you're talking about outdoor engagement, as that's a scoring criteria. How are you getting these kids outside? Physical activity, health and wellness. And then also, how are you impacting these families and students that have been impacted by COVID, whether it's providing that childcare, giving their kids a safe and affordable place to be while the parents work, and also benefiting their social and emotional well-being doing so. So it's not just like a typical, I guess, daycare, but there's recreational and educational components to that. So those are the 4 areas that are going to be reviewed the most by the review panel. And again, Dave talked about that, how there could be time at the end for Q&A and follow-ups by the review panel. Once the review panel is done with their scoring, they submit their list to AWC, and AWC and OSPI are the final, they ultimately are the ones that approve the final awards or recipients.
Thanks, Jennifer. The funding contract, we wanted to highlight a few things about this from the AWC perspective. And I know there's lots of questions in the chat. I just want to acknowledge those. And I know some folks are trying to answer a few of them as we go, and then we'll have time here at the end to delve into them a little bit more. But again, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the funding contract. This is something we learned a lot about during the 2021 cycle, and did a lot of work to revise our contract with the funding recipients, our subcontractors. We have a model contract. It is available on WRPA's SEEK funding website. It's been, again, modified from 2021 to address some of the common issues that we had when cities were reviewing it and the questions they had and some of the particular issues we ran into. This time around, we will not be accepting any revisions to this contract. It is fully approved by AWC, our legal counsel, and OSPI. And so it needs to remain as is. So we ask that you make sure before you apply that you've reviewed the contract, you've had your attorney review the contract, and make sure that you can enter into the funding agreement as part of the application process. A few areas just to note. There are insurance requirements, as has been mentioned, for your agency as the subcontractor and any third-party agents you may have. So those local nonprofits that you're partnering with to provide a service. And this is really if that third-party local nonprofit is directly supervising the youth involved. We will need their proof of insurance as well. We did revise the agreement from last year just to make sure we addressed the insurance risk pool nature that most local governments use for insurance purposes. There's a confidentiality section in the agreement. It has been revised to address all of our Public Records Act requirements and obligations. And so hopefully that will not cause any concerns. AWC is subject to PRA just as you all are. The funding, as has been mentioned, is paid on a reimbursement basis. The contracts will cover the time frame from Jacob, correct me if I get this wrong, April 15th through September 15th. And then all reimbursements and reports will need to be made by October 1, 2022. We will withhold 10% of the funds until all of your reports are in, and pay particular attention to the reporting requirements in attachment C. They are consistent with what we've talked about in terms of what the program goals are and the kind of data we're looking for to demonstrate how the program goals have been achieved. So I know most of the questions are about what can we apply for, but we don't want to have any surprises on the back end when you see the funding contract. So please take a look at that. Jacob, anything I missed?
Nope, I think that covers it. Thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to probably go and address those questions that are in the chat that didn't get addressed.
I think this is the last one. So how much money are cities in the first category, population K or less, allowed to apply for?
$500,000 is the maximum that any agency can apply for. There's no limit though. If you're a smaller agency, you're not restricted. You can still apply for up to $500,000 total.
And we do welcome anyone to take themselves off mute and ask any questions as well.
This is Doug. I noticed we had a couple of questions about kayaks and paddle boards for indoor pools. I think that was one of the questions. Paddle boarding and kayak classes for an indoor pool, and then after school programs to teach children in 5th grade to swim before a customary city pool opens and the staffing, equipment, and the like associated with those things. I don't know who wants to take that one.
I'll take a shot at it. I think, with any specific type of program you want to offer, the key is how does it achieve the program goals? How are you reaching youth? How are you engaging with them? How are you getting them to engage with their peers? That's it. So it's not so much that we're, this specific type of program, it's who is that program reaching and how are you achieving those program goals? So, I mean, all of those could potentially be eligible. It just ties back to what's the population you're serving? How are you intending to help them?
We got a plethora of questions coming in. So how much money is there total to allocate?
We have approximately $10 million to allocate for the 2022 cycle.
How are the savings supposed to pass on to the program participants?
I'm not quite sure exactly what that question is getting at. I mean, what we're looking for is, in terms of those program goals, is how are you reducing barriers to participation? So if you are getting SEEK funding to reach that, an underserved population, how are you making sure that they're able to participate in that, a program cost isn't a barrier? So that's what we're looking for.
And then just confirming the eligible timeframe. So we can purchase and prepare items for reimbursement starting 4/15 for a program that starts later in the summer.
Yes.
Perfect.
Tiffany or Candace, I would say, as long as you've been obviously awarded the funds and your contract is fully executed.
Let me take one that I see, because I'll give you all my dream, the impossible dream answer. There's a question about whether there will be funding in 2023. And what I would say is OSPI got the federal relief funding that enables 21 and 22. From my perspective, part of the laboriousness of collecting this data is, my dream would be if we can show that a lot of folks are being served who hadn't been before, that some of these unserved and underserved communities are being brought into outdoor programming. Then we have a fantastic story to take to the legislature. At that point, we would need the state of Washington to be the funder, if you will. But that would be my dream as your state lobbyist. And I hope the OSPI and AWC folks don't throw any tomatoes at me. But that would be the ultimate goal. Obviously, we don't have any assurances at this point.
Perfect.
And I would let John answer, respond to that as well.
Doug, well stated. With any programs like this, because we know this is limited time based on the ESSER allocation for the COVID relief funds, but the thing that we always want is an opportunity to have that sustainability. So you stated it very well. These are great programs, and it would make a compelling case at the legislative level to allocate funds to do this. We would support that.
All right. Just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, our city can apply for funds to support a Boys and Girls Club summer program.
Yes, their program would have to meet the program goals, and you would have to be, the city is the lead agency in this situation. We would contract with the city or the county, or I don't know who is asking the question, but I will also mention though, and John, if you want to share, there are funds available for community partners through Schools Out Washington, through a similar arrangement with OSPI for, I think, well, I'll stop there and John, let you talk about that other source of funding.
Yes, Schools Out Washington does. That's exactly what those funds are for. I can't off the top of my head remember how much the allocation is, but they should be getting some information out soon to folks as well. I know that I was working with their leadership, finalizing things for this upcoming cycle. So be on the lookout for that.
Next question, will there be examples of insurance requirements you are asking the third party / subcontractors to submit?
Jacob, do you want to take that one? You saw those.
Yeah, so pretty much the insurance for third parties is outlined in the model contract that we have posted on the website. So they just need to demonstrate that they have insurance up to a certain level and then just submit their documentation to us. That can typically, it's just a note from their insurance provider that they have a certain amount of coverage, but that is all spelled out in the model contract.
Perfect. Under project costs, what is facilities applied towards?
I can take that one too. So again, that's if you need to use, you know, a community center, if you are renting a pavilion, anything where you need to go to a place or a space to rent out to run your programs. I know at the city side of things, even though you know, a city might have a community center that's operated by the city, Parks and Rec programs will still need to rent and pay rent to use those facilities. So again, community centers, pavilions, anything along those lines.
Perfect. Next question. With the amount of off summer camp program offerings through our department, we are hoping to apply for scholarships, equipment, and outreach/marketing for all summer camp programs. Should this be done in one application, or do we pick 3 program areas and each applies separately?
Jacob, do you want to respond to that? You had a good kind of
Yeah.
example of what we were thinking there.
Yeah, so I'll try to explain my example as best I can. So, you know, the idea with limiting to 3 is that you know, we realize that cities, counties, parks districts, you might offer, for example, 3 different programs, like for example, a day camp that runs throughout the summer. So that would be one program application, or you might provide a team leadership camp, and that could be another program. So what we're hoping in these applications is that each application will focus on a specific area or group or program that you're running for the summer. I hope that answers your question. If you'd like to reach out or you want to talk through, I'm more than happy to go into more details if need be.
And I know day camp covers a lot. So if you're looking to get the most bang for your buck, I would say apply for your day camps.
I just would add to that. You need a strong tie to the program goals. And so if you are just applying for your full day camp program and that covers, you know, the youth you would normally serve and not really addressing how you're reaching the program goals, that may not be a strong application. So really focus on those program goals and how what you're applying for is supporting them.
Next question, can we use SEEK funding to lower the price of camps for all participants? Example, 50% off for the entire community or just for need-based scholarships?
John, I'm interested in your reaction to that question. I think, again, the strength of your application is going to be how you're meeting the program goals. And those are, you know, the targeted population. Not to say maybe no, but again, how strong will your application be?
Yeah, I agree, Candace. It is going back to those goals that you have, and ultimately, service kids are kids. They need to get service, and I don't want to be restrictive on it. So I think a lot of it's going to go back to the strength of application and tying things back to that your outcomes that you're seeking.
The next question is: would college tours be eligible?
Gosh, that's a really creative idea. And I think as a field trip, you know, particularly where you're tying it to maybe an underserved population that wouldn't otherwise get that experience, that could be a fun and creative kind of field trip, maybe.
Perfect. Our scholarships are made through partnerships with another agency who bills us annually, usually year end. Most of these $30,000 are spent during summer, but are not invoiced during summer months. Can we somehow request reimbursement for these scholarships?
Yes, I feel like there must be a way to make that happen if the funds were expended during the course of your contract, you know, kind of April 15th to September 15th timeframe. Perhaps you can get your contractor to bill you sooner, provide proof of the expense having been incurred. I feel like there must be some ways to make those timeframes work, provided that the costs were incurred and for the purposes of the program during the funding period.
Perfect. Have reimbursements already been issued for the last round? Were there any issues that we can learn from on this round?
And I can take that one, and Candace, you can follow up. So yes, so money is going out from this last round. So under the model contract, you are allowed to submit monthly reimbursements, and then the final reimbursement is due that October 1st, that deadline there. Probably the biggest thing to remember is that in the contract, it will require you to provide some evidence for any transaction over $50. And so just making sure that you are keeping track of receipts, invoices, things along those lines that demonstrate how those funds were spent, and we can see clearly that you spent those funds on your programming. Probably, honestly, the biggest trip up that I think I saw is that groups forgot to sign their reimbursement request form. It just adds a couple extra days to the back and forth to make sure that gets signed and included. So just make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's and getting those things taken care of.
Perfect. We bring in center visitors each week to our summer program. We could use these funds to cover center visitors. We contract with a school district for buses for field trips. We can use those funds for that too, right?
Well, I don't know what kind of center or anything, but again, it goes back to the program goals. And if you're serving kids, that and achieving those program goals, transportation costs, field trip costs are potentially eligible costs. So probably, I think, is the answer.
Perfect. Snowco Parks has many nonprofit and for-profit entities operating related programs in our public spaces. If I understand correctly, Snowco Parks would apply and funds would allow certain programs to expand, reduce participant fees, etc.
Yes, I think they've got it.
Perfect. Does this grant program dovetail or work in any way with any other youth outdoor initiatives in the state, like outdoor schools?
John, do you have any insights into that? I don't.
Off the top of my head, I don't. There aren't any deliberate linkages, but I'm sure, just like we spoke about, we have the SEEK funds here, and then we have the Schools Out Washington funds. We have at least that linkage there. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but all these are complementary programs. That's what I'm ascertaining here through these conversations. This isn't just a one thing. There's a lot of things going on in the communities, which is really good.
We had a question about location of items on the website, but I'll do that at the end and share my screen. The next one is, we were not able to ask for reimbursement of this substantial cost and an impact goal of this funding, as scholarships do not show payment within the SEEK program window. Summer scholarships show up year end, November. Would really like to find a way to fit our summer scholarships into our ask this time.
Again, I would say, if there is a way that you can get that documentation and sooner, working with your contractor to make that happen. We've got our own deadlines in terms of wrapping up reimbursements and reporting. And so, we know that it's a little bit of a crunch at the end with that October 1 deadline for getting in reimbursement requests, but hopefully we can find a way to get adequate documentation, within that time frame that would allow you to apply for those kinds of scholarships. But again, you may have to work with your partners to advance that timing so that you can get funding.
Perfect. Do programs need to be full day, every day, or can they be a weekly offering?
I think, again, whatever fits the program goals. So I think we saw all of that this year. So all of its potential.
And
Yeah,
then
I would just add to that for that question. Obviously, it's a competitive program. The evaluators are going to be looking at all the applications. They may see a lot that are, that are more intensive than weekly, but that's just something to keep in mind. We need to see how many applications there are, and the reviewers are going to base their review off of that.
next question, can you confirm your definition of program areas? Each individual program is an application, or can activities be in one application, such as 2 different summer day camps that serve different ages?
And I can speak a bit to that. I would argue, and anyone can follow up on this, but I think as long as the programming is similar, so because it's a day camp, even though it's serving different ages, you would be able to put those in one application. Again, you would want to go back to those program goals and just show how, even though it's 2 different summer camps, how the program goals apply in those 2 different summer camps serving 2 different ages or 2 different age groups.
Perfect.
And Jacob, I'll follow up with that. I know that part of that was what are some other areas? And I know we said before day camp is one. I know that, and maybe Jacob, you can list some of the other things that people applied for, but there was a youth kayaking program. It wasn't necessarily a camp, but it was getting youth out kayaking. Maybe it's a youth program for climbing, or it's a childcare, because childcare is something that is, one of the criteria is helping support families as they go back to work. Aside from a camp, maybe it's more of a childcare component and explaining how that works. Jacob, if you wanted to maybe list some other ones that people qualified for last time, that might help give people ideas of categories.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and, thinking back, there was that other question about, do these need to be every day, once a week, things like that. This last summer, we did see a variety of programs that came in. So I think, again, with your applications, you could put your weekly, so everyday programs into one program application. We saw other parks and counties who put together evening activities for teens, and those were weekly events throughout the summer. So again, that could be another program application that you submit, is, for those weekly activities for your communities. So yeah, just similar programs that you're putting together, you can group into your one application. And Jennifer, sorry if, yeah.
No, that's good. I was just thinking of like maybe a mobile recreation program where you go to different parks and reach out to those kids that maybe transportation is a barrier, or whether it's, I know somebody was talking about swimming, if it's providing swimming lessons at free or reduced cost. That's another one that's really great. So those maybe are some other examples.
Perfect. A reasonable indirect administration costs eligible for reimbursement?
That's a good question. We hadn't really had this question about kind of that administration or maybe overhead costs. Certainly, staffing costs are eligible. And so if you're talking about the fact that your parks director, has a little bit of time in overseeing the program, and so you're including that in your staffing time. I think that may be reasonable. John, if I'm getting out there on anything, stop me. I don't know how we'd feel exactly about like the 20% admin fee on top of all of your cost. But the fact that you've got kind of general supplies and you're going to charge this programs a little bit for general use of all the supplies in the supply closet, that seems like a reasonable sort of administrative cost. Sean, you want to jump in there?
Sure. Yeah, Candace, thank you. Yeah, these are federal funds, so they are regulated by the GANs that oversee federal funds. So there's a threshold, and again, that'll go back to your budget, and we just have to look and see if they're reasonable and prudent cost. We know that the cost of business is you need some of those indirects, but as you folks are reviewing those, I'm sure you'll consider that in the budget part of it. I'd say 10 to 20% would not be acceptable. I can't remember off the top of my head what the indirect is for this, but it's less than that. I'm thinking anywhere in a ballpark of 3 to 7% is what I'm thinking. But that would have to be, then you'd have to justify that in your application, why you're establishing that indirect cost. So ultimately, we want the money to get out to our students, but realizing the fact that there is cost of doing business, because this is probably above and beyond what you normally do. Hope that helps. And if we need further clarification, I can always reach out to our fiscal office. So I appreciate this question surfacing today.
Mm-hmm. What are the exact dates that funding reimbursement is in effect for this summer?
This summer, meaning next summer, I'm guessing 2022. So the contract term would be April 15th, starting April 15th, and your final reimbursement requests are due October 1. So cost incurred during that time frame. And
then is staffing necessarily paid, or can volunteers such as a Rotary Club volunteer group count? How would this be represented in our budget?
You can certainly use volunteers. There's no prohibition on that from if you don't have a cost for providing staffing because you're using volunteers, we probably wouldn't approve a staffing funding request. So your budget is what you're requesting funding for. So if you don't need funding for staffing, you would request it for what you did need, field trip or transportation costs.
Okay. We're developing a training module for our ongoing rec companions program that deepens our capacity to respond to the special need participants year round. If we schedule this to be offered at April 15th, would this be eligible?
So that sounds like it's a training program for staff to serve special needs youth, not particularly tied to outdoor recreation or summer recreation, but maybe more generally. I don't know. I don't think it's a no. I'm just not quite sure. John, what's maybe your reaction to that kind of training? I think it needs to have a direct tie.
Yeah, that's the common theme of all of this. It needs to have a direct tie and be relevant really to what the program that you're applying for the grant funds for, if that makes sense. We realize that some of this will be transferable training, but then again, that'll be assessed through the strength of the application. So my suggestion would be to really seriously consider what that particular training is and how that relates back to your goals and your program in total and that program that you're applying for.
Maybe a stronger way to apply for that would be some portion of it that's, staff time for your summer staffing folks who are attending that training, where it helps them provide that direct service or better provide that direct service.
Perfect. Well, that is the questions in the chat, but I did want to take a moment to just share the website on where to find all of the information we've been talking about. If you go on our website, this is our homepage. Under grants and awards, you will see that we have our Seek Fund, and this is going to be your informational page that includes everything that we talked about today. And we did break it down by fund details. The informational meeting section, we will have the recording posted there. We will have the chat posted there and the PowerPoint posted there after this meeting. We have our eligibility, how to apply, evaluation, so on and so forth. So definitely please take a look at this page. This has all the information that you need. And then if you go back to that menu item, grants and awards, and go to Seek Fund Application 2022, this is where you're going to actually apply. And again, it will have an application summary guide, which is a documentation that includes all the things we're going to ask for on the actual online form. It's going to include your project cost worksheet, as well as that subcontractor funding agreement that we've talked about. And then from there, once you look through everything and you prepare everything, you're going to go ahead and apply now. Again, please be concise, be to the point, think about your program goals and how it relates. Here is everything we need. And of course, always contact the WRPA office if you have any questions, and we're happy to assist you. So with that, thank you so much. We're so excited to potentially have double, if not more, applicants this year. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye-bye.